Good morning, everybody. My name's Gary Nichol. Can I just check, first of all, do you understand what I'm saying in terms of the words I'm speaking? A little bit. Okay. It makes it more difficult because I'm from the north part of England towards Scotland. So I have a bit of an accent as well, so it makes it more difficult. So apologies in advance for that. I teach in London in an area called Stockwell, which is very inner city, very multicultural, diverse. In my school we have approximately 50 different languages. We have 500 children. 30 of those children have autism severely, so we have a special unit for autistic children on the site as well, and I have approximately 95 staff. 3 years ago when I joined the school was what's called a category, which means it was in special measures, which means it was failing in every way, really. Correct. And this talk is really all about the 3-year journey going from special measures to straight directly to good, and we kind of jumped satisfactory. The PowerPoint is also in English, so apologies for that as well. Really, today is all about 6 key areas, and they're generally called, back in England, the 6 key areas of urban leadership within inner city cities. The first of the areas it's called knowledge of shaping the future, and really it's all about a 3 or a 5-year plan to develop and improve the school during that time scale. This entire screen is really summarised in children becoming independent, autonomous, lifelong learners and creating the environment for them to do that. And it's really not about accepting poverty, accepting deprivation as an excuse for underachievement. This screen is all about children becoming what I call intrinsically motivated. So it's the school creating an environment whereby the children from within themselves feel a desire and a need to drive themselves forward. And that only happens if we have teaching staff and all support staff working in the school working to that same level of individual autonomy. And my job really is to create an environment where they feel inspired to come to work to teach the children. And because the children are working at such a low level when they're 5-year-old, and it's only through outstanding teaching that the children will get to that level. Generally, with education, we talk about politics and how politics plays its part in education. And today's talk is really not involving politics at all. Back in England, we have a management system whereby we have the carrot and the stick. And really, generally, in the 20th century, that's been what's called Taylorism and Fordism, which is assembly line production. And there's a massive distrust between management and staff within English teaching. And the school really, at my school, is involving making teachers into autonomous individuals whereby they become the master of their craft. Overriding everything is what's called the assessment cycle, assessment for learning. And for children and staff, it's very important to realise what their starting point is in order for them to move to their next level of learning. That's for children and staff. It must involve all of the community. It must involve the parents, it must involve the governing body, and it's got also to involve the local community within the school, because the schools in England right now are what's called a hub of a local community, and improving a school has got to involve all of the entire community moving forward, and the head teacher is at the very top of that pile organising. And what is fundamental is teachers still learning, because very often in England the teachers stop learning when they become a teacher, but right now in England the real agenda is teachers themselves carrying on learning throughout their profession, throughout their teaching life. And there's 2 key things in England with regard, certainly in my school, with regard to teacher development, and they are how the brain works, the neuroscience, and also children being able to learn through what's called an aesthetic way of learning, because very often the children learn through an anesthetic way of learning, whereas in my school they work through aesthetic, which means more creative way of learning. And at Larkhall Primary School, My job is to, one of my fundamental jobs is to lead what's called the assessment cycle, whereby the children's ability to learn, understand, and more importantly, the teacher's ability to determine the level of a child's understanding is fundamental to their assessment. Crucially, we have what's called the KPIs, the key performance indicators. In America, USA, the key performance indicators are used very much to award teachers pay increases, award teachers promotion within the American state system. But in the UK, it's different. At my school, we have what's called 5 key performance indicators. And they're the usual things such as assessment, such as cross-curricular teaching and learning. They are such as huge differentiation. And they're also to do with how children's work is presented in books. So the 4 or 5 KPIs in LARC. Yeah, of course. We have assessment. We have cross-curricular way of working. So there's no maths lesson, there's no English lesson. We also look at the presentation of children's work. And the most important thing is children being aware of their own targets, which is back to that autonomy. What's fundamental at Nichol Primary School for the last 3 years has really been to create a leadership team which is based on distribution of leadership. So it's not hierarchical, it's a distribution of leadership. In England, the teaching profession has been diluted, society doesn't view teachers in England in a real high way anymore. And we have what's called Ofsted, which are the government regulators who come into schools and regulate schools on their performance. And really, Ofsted and schools themselves, there's a massive mistrust. So the really good or outstanding schools in England have kind of leadership which is kind of an internal Ofsted. So the leaders themselves within the school are Ofsted themselves. In England, teachers traditionally are observed for around about 3 or 4 times per year, each time for 1 hour, which is around about 0.2% of their teaching time. And that is how teachers are assessed in England, which is ridiculous amount of time to assess a performance, 0.2%. And at Nichol, at my primary school, we no longer observe teachers in the classroom. We no longer observe them around the school themselves in terms of their interaction with children. It's really creating an environment of trust with the teaching profession, because teachers is still the highest of callings. It is still the most vocational of all jobs. And when they're in a classroom for 7 hours per day, I need to trust them to do their job without watching them. And the tool in Nichol is what's called peer mentoring. It creates an environment which is less of a top-down hierarchical environment and more of a lateral or distribution environment. And really, it's trying to create a competitive atmosphere within the school whereby teachers are raising their game. But it's very important to stress it is in a non-judgmental, unthreatening environment. Okay. And the teachers themselves work on 2 things. They have what's called self-reflection, and through the KPIs, the leadership monitor the teachers through the KPIs, the assessments, the children being aware of their targets. So with self-reflection, with KPI monitoring, the teachers themselves come up with their own way of improving their performance. And it is creating that trusting environment whereby teachers are the best practitioners in front of the children. Now, in September 2011, we introduced a cross-curricular way of working. And it's building on 2 key things: how the brain works, and it's fundamental that the neuroscience part of how the brain works informs teaching practice. And children in the UK spend all day in school kind of facing one way, whereas in their private life, they're influenced by so many 360 degrees media such as internet, TV, smartphones.